I would like to thank the organizers for having invited me here to speak about the bioarchaeology of innovation. It will to some degree echo what we have just heard, but I would like to go in some of the details and update some of it a little bit. I have also changed a little bit the title, again, also to echo what Sven Hansen just recently said. How the 4th millennium BC developments paved the way for opening up the Eurasian steppe that becomes so crucial in the 3rd millennium BC. So the 4th and the 3rd millennium BC in Eurasia witnessed fundamental changes in its technoscapes and social systems that what we have just heard of. And it's my pleasure to talk here on behalf of a much larger team of many specialists and to give a brief impression into the results of the bioarchaeological aspects of the ongoing Caucasus ERC project. The aims are the underlying factors behind the success of the spread of these innovations in the 4th millennium BC, and the role that the interface of the Caucasus Mountains, north of the Near Eastern civilizations, and the vast Eurasian grasslands at its northern side played in this success, in these processes. The spread of technologies is always associated with people. People transfer these novelties into new areas, and they do it by either migration or by transmitting the associated knowledge to new user groups via communication networks, and that can cover large areas. Until recently, and we are still coping with it, two paradigms were fundamental in all of this debate. The first is the idea that the spatial structure of archaeological phenomena, and I don't talk only about archaeological cultures, is largely congruent with social communities or even biological communities, and it is exclusive for them. And the second is the concept of new technologies or social ideologies to be passed on as packages, as a bundle of things together, moved together roughly at the same time and in a rather unilinear direction. And also, postmodern archaeology has managed to criticize and dismantle some of these grand narratives. For the spread of the early technologies, as we have seen before, the micro-narratives offered no real alternative. So it was only bioarchaeology that opened up here new analytical pathways, because the biosciences provide, from a very different perspective than archaeology, insights into the life and the life ways of individuals. From the bioarchives, basically the skeletal material, and what I present today are studies based on these bioarchives. The information from the bioarchives complement the social connotations of the archaeological context that it was found and can start to open up new perspectives. And we have already seen many of the papers cited. For the ERC, our Caucasus project, we collaborate with very fruitfully with various partners, and I'm very gracious to all of them to give the possibility to present here the results. We are aiming at population dynamics of humans and animals, at the formation and transformation of these populations, at their mobility or at migrations, economic aspects from the analysis of diets, food resources, or as well as mobility, but also on the origin and the spread of diseases that might have jumped on the bandwagon of the spreading innovations. A first result, we have already seen it, of the initial paleogenetic investigation that is published already in 2019, was that since the end of the 5th millennium, two different populations have existed in the Caucasus and its neighboring steppe, and they interacted culturally, so they exchanged pots, but not people. We have a clear divide in the genetic makeup, and we have a very long persistent of these genetic divide of more than 2,000 years. And second result of this study is that the immigration from the Near East via the Caucasus to Eurasia, which is the classical ex oriente lux concept for the spread of the innovations in the 4th and 3rd millennium BC, can not longer be stated. The migration of the southern populations to the north took place in the end of the 5th millennium, and I will go to the details later. What we do see, however, is that the innovations have spread across this population divide from the beginning onwards. The highly functional metal tools, for instance, of the 4th millennium mycop culture, or the wheel and wagon that you see mapped here, are found on both sides of the divide at roughly the same time. So the question is, where does it come from? And we don't have an answer to that yet. A second result of the initial study on diet, using stable isotope and current studies on the paleoproteomics, was that we were able to understand the emergence of the Eurasian steppe pastoralism in its timing and its economic dimensions much better than before. The isotope studies, as an older project together with Corinna Knipper and Claudia Gerling and other people in Basel. The isotope studies that you can see here and these are presented against the timeline and the associated environment the sites are located in, reveal a differentiation of groups that use either steppe or pitman mountain pastures for grazing the animals at the basis of their diets from roughly 3,500 onwards. Before that, we don't see this divide. The studies in paleoproteomics, aiming at the analysis of the protein molecules preserved in the dental calculus of the human consumers, were in addition able to inform us on the direct consumption. We have heard about that already. So we were, let's say the team spearheaded by Christina Warinner and Ashley Scott detected the respective proteins in the individuals from the late 5th, the 4th and the 3rd millennium. And it could show that the transformation of the protein-rich milk, which is perishable, into dairy products, offered durable, transportable, and nutrition-rich foods that could be really easily taken with somebody who is moving. The species, as we have heard already, was first of all sheep. And this was surprising because in the animal bone assemblages of the mycop culture and also the Neolithic cultures before, cattle dominate much more than sheep. And everybody was thinking, okay, it's on cattle. But sheep requires less water than cattle and is therefore much more better suited for grazing in the habitats, for instance, such as the Eurasian steppe. We could identify an initial phase of the use of dairy products in the late 5th and 4th millennium BC in the North Caucasus here. And this use of milk did certainly build on the earlier Neolithic use of milk, which is identified, however, only by vessel analysis here. We don't have the direct evidence so far. And during the 4th and 3rd millennium, this technology was rapidly adapted and quickly spread into the steppe proper. Finally, the horse bones dated from the late 4th millennium BC suggest another domestication center here in north of the Caucasus. The negative side of the medal was that early zoonosis accompanied the emergence of the steppe economy. Human-adapted Salmonella enterica pathogens, which cause the typhoid fever, were detected first time during the mid-4th millennium BC. And two of the oldest records of plague pathogens in its late Neolithic Bronze Age form stem from two Yamna graves north of the Caucasus. These zoonoses start from the time when the isotopic record indicate the split-off of the groups that lived permanently in steppe environments. And this opens up the questions of the hosts of these pathogens and the interplay of humans, domesticated and wild animals such as rodents in Eurasian steppe environments. That's maybe the reason why these pathogens start to spread at that moment. So now how can we integrate these individual observations from different sciences into an overall technical and social trajectories of Western Eurasia between the Neolithic and the Bronze Age? And which of these developments are crucial for the transformation in Europe in the 3rd millennium, which is in fact the topic of this conference? With a just recently submitted a new study of the Humanate DNA team led by Wolfgang Haak and Ayshin Ghalichi, we were able to significantly enhance our understanding of the genetic makeup of the people in this contact zone. So first of all, we couldn't strengthen the evidence of the two distinctive genetic ancestry profiles, which are roughly related to steppe and peatland habitats, but which are very much more complicated because they are found also within sites. We could start to clarify the start and the termination of these divide, and I will talk today only about the start. We still have these divides, we still have the very different genetic makeups, as you can see here, with the the Caucasus ancestry component combined from Neolithic, Anatolian Neolithic, Iranian farmer and hunter-gatherer components. I will go into the details later. And with these expanded data sets and new methods of analyzing kinship relations, we were also able to identify periods of interaction and separation. And we also are able to develop first ideas about the social mechanisms that probably coined the biological divide. I will not speak about that, but obviously behind this divide are highly different ideas about how to mate, so kinship concepts. The first decisive moment in this process in the North Caucasus is the mid-5th millennium BC, when groups with a Near Eastern Neolithic way of life, you see them here in red, crossed the mountains north. They brought with them not only agriculture, architecture, animal husbandry, and all the things of the so-called Neolithic package, but also the genetic ancestry that had emerged in the South Caucasus, here between the Anatolian farming or Anatolian Neolithic components and Caucasus hunter-gatherer components here. So these ancestry components spread north to the northern part of the mountains. At the same time, in the north, here in the with the green color, we witnessed the formation of the earliest steppe ancestry profile on the basis of Eastern hunter-gatherers and Caucasus hunter-gatherer groups, which were not admixed with these other Neolithic components. So you see this here on this line. So the Caucasus hunter-gatherer and the Eastern hunter-gatherer components come together, forming the first onset of the steppe ancestry components. So archaeologically, these groups are associated with first burial mounds in the steppe between the lower Volga, the lower Don, and the North Caucasus. And they have a very similar material culture. And this is the time when the proteomic analysis revealed the first evidence for the consumption of dairy products north of the Caucasus here, but not beyond, because the complementary study by Wilken et al. Could not find dairy products consumption in, for instance, in Khvalynsk or other sites, despite the fact that domesticated animals such as sheep are present at these sites. So they did obviously something else with them. The nitrogen data of these people in the steppe are somewhat enhanced, and the burial mounds indicate a modest but regular use of the steppe zone, also of the Caucasus, and this, in fact, is the onset of the Eurasian steppe pastoralism. With the emergence of the genetic frontier, we likewise observed this first exchange of the innovations, because the domesticated livestock and the dairy technologies coming with them of the southerners were speedily adopted. The individuals that consumed the milk were associated with the steppe and Neolithic ancestry. So the second milestone was the 4th millennium BC, archaeologically associated with the Maikop culture. It is the epoch that witnessed the gradual increase and the peak of the spread of the innovative technologies that we have just seen before. When we look into the genetics, we see a highly complicated situation. We have added here the so-called Schenke plots, which in fact illustrate the percentages of ancestry components modeled to get a certain result. And you see it is really like everybody is going up. But it's not exactly like that, because we see a consolidation of this southern group, the Caucasus ancestry, and a high diversification of the different steppe ancestry groups, ending up in 5 different genetic, let's say, units that exist, and all of them use mycop pots. All of them, these are the steppe mycop people. This is an example of a mycop proper grave. They use mycop mound construction, and they participate equally in the trajectories towards social differentiation, the display of social wealth or of wealth, especially in the later phase of the mycop epoch. So the mycop proper and the steppe mycop, the diverse steppe mycop groups were not only existing parallels as culturally integrated, but biologically separate populations for about 1 millennium. But both of them adopted quickly social trends like the burials with the wagons and adored animals. Yet they did it on their own side, in their own way, but they participated in the social trends of the respective other side. When we go into the economic of these groups, we see that the late 4th millennium steppe mycop, late Neolithic, and the first Yamnaya groups established the exploitation of the steppe habitat by introducing this combination of dairy, wheel transport, probably the breeding of wool sheep, and the first steps of horse domestication. We see now also associated with early Yamnaya individuals evidence of milk or of dairy consumption in the north here in the steppe proper, and we see the opening up, so the start of the differentiation between a steppe economic, let's say, isotope signals and Piedmont isotope signals. Both of them are mycop culture. Yeah, and with this also the first human-adapted Salmonella enterica pathogens were detected. So the negative side of this interaction between animals and steppe environments started here as well. It comes from a late steppe mycop individual from Ipatovo. The 2 oldest records of the plague pathogens, and now we have moved to the 3rd millennium BC, stem from early Yamnaya graves at Rashevatsky and Krasnogvardeyskoye, also north of the Caucasus. And during the 3rd millennium BC, the Yamnaya, Catacomb, and North Caucasus cultures were the ones that took over the barren of the Eurasian steppe pastoralism and gradually integrated then also other animal species such as goats and cattle into the system. And you see here the first goats, the green, and the cattle, the blue one, start not before the mid of the 3rd millennium BC. It is maybe related to climatic factors, but that is discussed in the article by Ashley Scott in details. So when we look at the genetics of this period, we see a quite interesting thing. We see a consolidation of the steppe-related ancestry, which is at that time already the Yamnaya culturally Yamnaya groups and others. And we see a consolidation of the Caucasus-related ancestry, where we have here basically Kura-Arax people, or people associated with the Kura-Arax culture. And we have in this phase no interaction between them, so the people are the consolidation, the separation of the populations has a climax at that time. And one might now expect also a cultural consolidation, but the genetically almost identical individuals from the steppe, from the North Caucasus cultures, are at least representing 3 or maybe 4 archaeological cultures, which is the Yamnaya culture, and this is the second individual with Yersinia pestis from a Yamnaya grave. The North Caucasian culture, that has a very nice mountain part as well, and the catacomb grave culture formations. All of them look genetically exactly the same. From a Caucasian perspective, the interest is that's maybe one of the reasons why the interest had somewhat changed in the 3rd millennium. And parallel to the opening of the steppe in the north, the Caucasian impulses of the mountain groups were maybe more directed to the south, with the expansion of the Kura-Arax culture from the Central Caucasus, let's say the Caucasus Mountains and the South Caucasus Mountains, into the Levant and into Iran. So what are the take-home messages? The bioarchaeological aspects demonstrate that in the middle of the 4th millennium, at the northern side of the Caucasus, the preconditions for a sustainable utilization of the steppe as a habitat was assembled. The emergence of the Eurasian steppe pastoralism enabled the establishment of the continent-wide communication networks in and across this habitat. And along these routes of the early pastoralists, it was possible to transmit the knowledge or to transmit people, so I would not rule out migrations. Its components were the development of transportable food, of wheel transport, domestication of the horse, and probably the breeding of the wool sheep, and in order to acquire transportable mobile dwellings made of wool. Second, the biological lineage formation, biological lineages and the archaeological cultures are not congruent. They are separate aspects of human collectivity, and their trajectories and the vectors must or should be studied separately, but in communication. The Caucasian case studies can be a kind of warning. 6 genetic groupings resembling one microbe culture, and one almost identical genetic formation resembled 3 or 4 Middle Bronze Age cultures. So the third moment is that the transformations of the that happened in the 3rd millennium in Europe have deep roots in Eurasian context and also in some obviously maybe more remote parts, such as the North Caucasus and the interface to the steppe. Thank you very much.